In the quiet town of Maplewood, Massachusetts, snow drifted gently from the sky. At the far end of Elm Street, where tall, old trees lined the sidewalk like watchful sentinels, a warm glow spilled from the windows of a modest house. Inside, Claire Freeman sat by the window, slowly turning the pages of a borrowed library book. Now and then, her eyes wandered to the snowy scene outside, as if the silence held some kind of answer. Claire's face was soft, shaped by years of kindness, but it also carried the subtle wear of someone who had weathered her share of storms. "Mom, is this okay?" called a voice from the living room. 12-year-old Sophia was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a flurry of colorful paper scraps and bits of ribbon. She was focused, tongue peeking out slightly in concentration. Claire rose from her chair and walked over with a small smile. "It's beautiful, Sophia." "Who's it for?" "For Grandma," Sophia replied seriously. "It's her Christmas present." Claire's smile faltered for just a moment. Her mother, Ruth, hadn't been herself lately, and their relationship had always been complicated. Ruth had spent decades working at Maplewood's oldest real estate firm and was known for expecting perfection, especially from her daughters. "I'm sure Grandma will love it," Claire said, choosing her words with care. In truth, she wasn't certain Ruth would even notice the effort behind a handmade gift. Narrator's note: sometimes the hardest part of parenting is hiding the truth behind a gentle lie. Out of nowhere, a snippet of an online ad popped into her mind, something about people earning thousands just from narrating Reddit stories on YouTube. No face, no voice, just a laptop. It felt wildly out of place in this quiet moment, but Claire brushed it off. Ruth and Claire's sister, Julia, had always treated Claire and Sophia like the lesser branch of the family tree. The contrast was most glaring when they talked about Julia's son, Caleb, who could seemingly do no wrong. Just then, the phone rang. Claire sighed and picked it up. "Claire, how are the preparations for tomorrow's dinner coming along?" came Ruth's unmistakable, clipped tone. "Hello, Mother." "Yes, of course I remember," Claire replied, steady and polite. "I'm planning to bring potato salad." "Julia's making roast beef," Ruth snapped. "Why don't you bring something more?" Claire closed her eyes and exhaled, measured. "All right. I'll bring dessert too." "That would be helpful. By the way, how is Sophia doing in school?" "Caleb scored a perfect 100 on his math test last week." "Julia and David are thrilled." Of course they are, Claire thought, her expression blank. "Sophia's doing well too. She started volunteering at the library. Her teachers have had wonderful things to say." "I see," Ruth replied, clearly uninterested. "Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Don't be late. 5 o'clock sharp." Once the call ended, Claire remained still, phone still in hand. Sophia approached quietly. "Grandma?" she asked gently. Claire forced a smile. "Yes, just finalizing plans for tomorrow's dinner." Sophia said nothing, but her eyes said plenty, more than any 12-year-old should. She reached out and squeezed her mother's hand. "I stopped by Grandma's house again after school," Sophia said. "I helped her clean." She smiled a little. Claire looked at her daughter, surprised. She'd known Sophia visited Ruth after school, but hadn't realized just how much help she'd been offering. "You've been doing all that?" "It's not a big deal," Sophia said quietly. "Grandma hasn't been feeling great lately. Just, don't tell anyone. Especially not Aunt Julia. She makes a fuss." Claire knew that wasn't the full truth. Ruth didn't want Julia to know she was slipping. Pride like hers didn't leave room for weakness. And more than that, Claire had a sinking feeling Ruth wasn't even acknowledging Sophia's help. Outside, the snow thickened, falling in heavy tufts. Claire pulled Sophia into a hug. "You're such a thoughtful soul," she whispered. Sophia flushed and grinned a little. "Hey Mom, do you think everyone will get along this Christmas?" Claire hesitated. She didn't believe for a second that Ruth or Julia would change how they treated Sophia, but looking at that hopeful face, she couldn't bring herself to say it. "I think they will," she lied gently. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Claire found her daughter's sketchbook lying open. Inside were warm, whimsical caricatures of the whole family: Ruth, Julia, David, Caleb, and herself. Above them, Sophia had scrawled, "My beloved family." Claire flipped through more pages. Sophia had drawn plans for homemade gifts, each with thoughtful detail. She'd spent every bit of her allowance buying materials, using books from the library to guide her crafting. Claire's chest tightened. The gap between her daughter's tender-hearted optimism and the cold truth of how things might play out this Christmas was almost too much to bear. Christmas was nearly here. Outside, the town glowed under festive lights, street lamps casting a soft shimmer against the snow. Back at the library, Claire checked the clock as she shelved her final book for the evening. It was nearly 6. Sophia would be at home now, probably hunched over her desk, finishing her homework, still believing, still hoping. "Mom, can I stay a little longer?" Sophia called from across the counter. Her notebooks and craft supplies were scattered all around her like a creative storm in progress. "What are you working on?" Claire asked as she walked over, curiosity tugging at her voice. Sophia quickly shielded her project with both hands. "It's a secret. You can't see it until Christmas." Claire chuckled softly and ran her fingers gently through her daughter's hair. "All right. Just make sure you're done by the time I finish cleaning up." For the past couple of weeks, this had become their quiet routine. After school, Sophia would show up at the library, settle in under the pretense of doing homework, and dive into some secretive craftwork instead. Claire had her suspicions. Probably Christmas presents, she thought. That evening, as they walked home together along the snow-blanketed sidewalk, Sophia was more subdued than usual. "Did you stop by Grandma's again today?" Claire asked gently. Sophia gave a small nod. "Yeah. I made some soup and put it in the fridge. Her cough's gotten worse." Claire frowned, concern growing. "Has she been to a doctor?" "She says no," Sophia replied, slipping into an exaggerated imitation of her grandmother's voice. "It's just a cold." Then she added, "But she asked me to get her some medicine, so I went to the pharmacy." Claire stopped walking. "Sophia, how did you pay for that?" "With my allowance," Sophia said with a shrug. "It's not a big deal, Mom." Claire's chest ached. That money was supposed to be for gifts, for something special. And Ruth likely hadn't even said thank you. "I'll go check on her tomorrow," Claire said with quiet resolve. "But she might get upset if she knows I told you," Sophia said, worry flickering in her eyes. "It'll be fine," Claire reassured her, resting a hand gently on Sophia's shoulder. "And I won't say a word about you. I promise." The next day, Claire knocked on her mother's door. Ruth opened it, surprised to see her standing there. "Claire? Is something wrong?" "I just came to check on you," Claire said plainly. "Sophia mentioned you weren't feeling well." Ruth narrowed her eyes slightly. "Sophia told you?" "I noticed myself," Claire fibbed smoothly. "Mother, you don't look well. Have you seen a doctor?" "It's nothing serious," Ruth insisted, motioning Claire inside. "Would you like some tea?" But in the kitchen, as she moved to boil the water, Ruth was overtaken by a rough coughing fit. She braced herself against the counter, her body sagging with the effort. Claire rushed to her side, steadying her. "Mother, are you really okay?" "I told you, it's just a cold," Ruth said, though her voice was barely more than a rasp. Claire stayed close. After a beat, she said quietly, "Sophia's been coming here every day." "Helping you?" Ruth didn't reply right away. Then, with a tired sigh, she said, "She's been very sweet." "But you're taking it for granted, aren't you?" Claire's voice held a quiet edge now. "She used her own allowance to buy you medicine." "I didn't ask her to do that," Ruth said, defensive. "Besides, I'm giving her the same gift I got for Caleb." Claire stiffened. Last Christmas, Caleb had unwrapped a pair of pricey sneakers while Sophia had received a cheap stationery set. "Mother, It's not about how much the gift costs, Claire said, her voice heavy. Sophia just wants to feel loved. That's all. Ruth lowered herself into a chair at the table and pressed her hands over her face. I've always done what I thought was best for this family. For all of us? Claire asked quietly. Or just for Julia and Caleb? The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Ruth looked up. You're still coming to Christmas Eve dinner, right? Julia's planning something special. Claire exhaled. Yes, we'll be there. On Christmas Eve, Claire and Sophia made their way to Ruth's house. Sophia wore her red dress, the one with the slightly too short hem, and had tied her hair with little red ribbons. In her hands was a small, neatly wrapped gift box. Do you think Grandma and Caleb will like their presents? Sophia asked, a hint of worry in her voice. I'm sure they'll be happy, Claire replied, though her confidence was mostly for show. When they arrived, Julia, her husband David, and Caleb were already there. Caleb was glued to a shiny new smartphone and barely lifted his eyes when they entered. Claire. Sophia, Julia greeted them with a quick kiss on each cheek. Then her eyes flicked to Sophia's dress. Isn't that dress a bit small? Sophia's cheeks flushed crimson. She knew it was tight, the hem was shorter than it should be. But there hadn't been money for a new one. Claire stepped in with calm but firm warmth. I think it's a lovely dress, Julia. She turned to Sophia. You look beautiful. When they finally sat down at the dinner table, the conversation predictably shifted toward Caleb's academic accomplishments and David's recent promotion at work. Julia beamed as she spoke, clearly relishing the attention, while Ruth listened with open admiration. Caleb's thinking about applying to Exit Academy next year, Julia said, lifting her glass. With his grades, he's a shoo-in. That's wonderful, Ruth said, smiling warmly at her grandson. You always make this family proud. Claire glanced sideways at Sophia, who quietly pushed her food around her plate. She was a bright student too, but no one ever seemed to ask how she was doing. Sophia received an award at school recently, Claire offered, trying to steer the conversation. For her volunteer work at the library. Ruth replied with a distracted nod. By the way, Julia, this roast beef is absolutely delicious. Claire fell silent. Sophia kept eating, her expression unreadable, but her eyes held a familiar ache. Under the table, Claire reached out and gave her daughter's hand a gentle squeeze. After dinner, it was time for dessert. Sophia followed Ruth into the kitchen, helping carry out the plates. Grandma, Sophia said softly, how are you feeling today? Ruth gave a curt reply. I'm fine, thank you. Did you take your medicine? Ruth glanced over her shoulder and lowered her voice. Don't bring that up in front of everyone. Sophia nodded wordlessly and returned to the dining room, carefully balancing the dessert plates in her hands. As the evening wore on, Sophia's eyelids began to droop. Claire checked the time and stood up. We should head out. She's getting sleepy. Yes, Ruth said without missing a beat. Make sure you come early tomorrow to open presents. We'll be here by 9, Claire promised. On the walk home, Sophia was unusually quiet. You okay? Claire asked gently. Sophia gave a faint smile. Yeah. Davadora will be better, right? Yes, Claire replied, though the hesitation in her voice betrayed her doubt. When they got home, Sophia went straight to her room. Later, when Claire peeked in, she saw her daughter sitting on the bed, pen in hand. What are you up to? Claire asked softly. Just finishing the last present, Sophia said, holding up a small envelope. I wrote letters. One for everyone. Claire sat beside her and slowly ran her fingers through Sophia's hair. You're such a thoughtful soul, she whispered. Sophia turned to her mother, her face serious. Mom, whatever happens tomorrow, I'll be okay. Claire paused. What do you mean? Just a feeling, Sophia shrugged. Good night, Mom. I hope Christmas will be a good one. After Claire left the room, Sophia added one last line to the envelope: "This is my final gift. I have nothing more to give to those who don't see my worth." Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, the sky a soft, brilliant blue. The town lay under a fresh blanket of snow, everything glistening like a holiday postcard. Claire and Sophia arrived at Ruth's house right on time, 9 o'clock sharp. Sophia clutched a carefully wrapped box in her gloved hands, visibly anxious. "It'll be fine," Claire whispered, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Today's a special day." Ruth greeted them at the door, dressed in a festive red sweater. Her complexion looked brighter, though Claire could tell it was more makeup than wellness. "Merry Christmas," Ruth said cheerfully. "Julia and her family are already here." In the living room, the Christmas tree stood tall and full, surrounded by a mountain of gifts. Caleb was already on the floor, practically bouncing as he stared at a giant box with his name on it. Julia and David sipped coffee on the sofa. "You're late," Julia said, a trace of a smirk on her lips. "Caleb's been waiting for half an hour." "We're right on time," Claire replied calmly. "Good morning, David." "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," David replied with a warm smile, the only one in the family who always treated them kindly. Sophia quietly placed her presents beneath the tree. Her boxes were smaller, but each was wrapped with meticulous care, adorned with handmade bows and delicate paper ornaments. Ruth clapped her hands together. "Time to open presents. Caleb, you go first." Caleb tore into the largest package, revealing a sleek, brand-new gaming console. His face lit up. "Wow, Grandma. This is exactly what I wanted, thank you." "I'm glad," Ruth said proudly. "I had it specially ordered." Next came Julia and David. Their gifts: designer scarves and luxury brand ties. Claire received a casual sweater, nice enough, but clearly an afterthought. "And Sophia, dear," Ruth said, handing over a small envelope. "This is for you." Sophia accepted it with both hands and offered a polite, quiet "Thank you, Grandma." When Sophia opened the envelope, she pulled out a single sheet of paper. Her smile faded instantly, replaced by a blank, frozen expression. "What does it say?" Claire asked, a hint of alarm creeping into her voice. Without a word, Sophia handed the note to her mother. Claire took it and stared, stunned. Written in Ruth's precise, familiar handwriting were just 3 cold words: "You are worthless." A heavy silence blanketed the room. Even the air seemed to still. Claire's face drained of color. "What is this supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice shaking as she looked straight at her mother. Ruth shrugged with a smug expression. "Why waste a gift on her? She's done nothing but get in the way." Julia laughed, sipping her coffee. "Exactly. She's just a sad little loser. Giving her something expensive would be a complete waste." Claire stood, trembling. Rage boiled beneath her skin. "How could you say that? She's your granddaughter. Don't you realize everything she's done for you?" "I never asked her to," Ruth replied coldly, arms crossed. In the corner, Caleb snorted with amusement. "That gaming console cost a fortune," he said smugly. Sophia couldn't even afford wrapping paper. Just then, Sophia stood up quietly. All eyes turned to her, expecting tears, but she looked strangely calm. She walked over to Ruth, holding a neatly wrapped box in both hands. "Grandma," she said in a soft voice, "this is my gift to you." She gently placed it on Ruth's lap. "Sophia, stop." Claire reached for her daughter's arm, voice cracking. "They don't deserve it." But Sophia gave her a small, bittersweet smile. "It's okay, Mom. This is the last one." Then she turned and slipped her hand into her mother's. "Let's go home." With tears clouding her vision, Claire rose and walked with Sophia toward the door. Before they reached it, Sophia paused at the table and left another small package behind. "This one's for Caleb," she said quietly. "Since I won't be here to give it to him." Outside, the cold air wrapped around them like a blanket of truth. Claire fumbled with her car keys, her hands shaking too much to work them. "Mom," Sophia said gently, "don't cry. I'm okay." Claire pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "Sophia, I'm so sorry you had to hear those awful words. They were wrong. You're incredible. You're everything they can't see." "I know," Sophia whispered. "That's why I'm done. I won't help Grandma with anything anymore. I'm not spending another minute on people who don't see my worth." Just then, a sudden scream rang out from inside the house. Startled, Claire and Sophia turned to look back. Through the frosted window, they saw Ruth and Julia frozen, eyes wide, hovering over the gift box. "I think they opened it," Sophia said quietly. Inside the house, Ruth sat speechless, staring at what lay inside the box. It was a handmade scrapbook, delicate, intricate, and filled with memories. Each page held carefully arranged family photos, captioned with handwritten notes about the moments they captured. Pictures of Ruth in her youth, of Claire and Julia as little girls, and even recent snapshots. Alongside the scrapbook was a set of warm, funny caricatures, drawn with love, of each family member. The cover read, "My beloved family." But what stopped Ruth cold was the diary. Sophia had been writing in it for months. The pages were filled with detailed notes, reminders about Ruth's medication, records of meals she'd cooked, and quiet observations of her grandmother's worsening health. She did all of this, Ruth's voice trembled. Julia, pale and quiet now, flipped slowly through the diary. "She came to your house every day. Cleaned. Cooked. And she never said a word." "Yes," Ruth admitted hoarsely. "She did. But her voice trailed off. At the bottom of the box was one more envelope. Ruth opened it and unfolded the letter. "Dear family, if you think I'm worthless, you'll soon see what life feels like without me. But don't worry, I'll continue to live, believing in my own worth. With love, Sophia." The letter slipped from Ruth's hands and fluttered to the floor. She rushed to the window, eyes scanning the snowy street. Claire and Sophia's car was already pulling away. "Come back," she whispered, pressing a hand to the glass. "Please, come back." Back at their house, Claire and Sophia stepped into the quiet warmth of their home. The modest Christmas wreath swayed gently on the front door as they entered. In an effort to lighten the mood, Claire offered a soft smile. "How about we make some hot chocolate? Then we can open my presents for you." Sophia nodded, but the glow in her eyes had dimmed. The morning still weighed heavy. "Mom," she said quietly, "did I do something wrong?" Claire peeked out from the kitchen. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "Writing that letter to Grandma. And everyone." Sophia was curled up on the sofa, hugging her knees. "Was it too mean?" Claire sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulder. "No, honey. You were honest. That takes more courage than most people have." "But I didn't see Grandma's face," Sophia whispered. I think she was really shocked." Claire felt a swell of emotion. Even after being treated so cruelly, Sophia still worried about how others felt. She pulled her daughter close. "You have a heart that sees people, even when they don't see you. That's something special, Sophia. Never lose that." "Sophia, your present was beautiful, and your letter was honest and brave," Claire said softly. "Sometimes telling the truth hurts, but in the end, it frees people. It brings light where there was silence." Just then, the kitchen timer rang. Claire stood up. "Hot chocolate's ready." "Then let's open my present," she added with a smile. Claire returned holding a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a new art supply set, premium colored pencils, a high-quality sketchbook, and a set of watercolor paints. Sophia's eyes lit up. "This is exactly what I wanted." "Thank you, Mom." The two of them settled into a cozy rhythm. While Sophia began sketching with her new tools, Claire curled up with her favorite book. The phone rang a few times, but Claire let it go unanswered. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, gently blanketing the world in silence. Just past noon, there was a knock at the door. Claire exchanged a glance with Sophia, then rose to answer it. When she opened the door, Ruth was standing there alone. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she held a small bag in her trembling hands. "Claire," she said, her voice breaking. "I want to talk to Sophia." Claire's expression turned cold. "That's enough for today, Mother." "Please," Ruth begged. "Just 5 minutes." Claire didn't move. "Why?" she asked. "To hurt her again?" Tears slid down Ruth's face. "No. I want to apologize." From the living room, Sophia's voice came quietly. "Mom, who is it?" Claire hesitated, then opened the door a bit wider so Sophia could see. "Grandma's here." Sophia stood from the couch slowly, her face unreadable. "May I come in?" Ruth asked, this time speaking directly to Sophia. Sophia looked at her mother, then gave a small, quiet nod. Reluctantly, Claire stepped aside and let Ruth in. But the woman who entered the room wasn't the Ruth they knew. Her posture had lost its rigidity, and her eyes, usually sharp, looked hollow, searching. "Sophia," Ruth began, her voice faltering. "I got your present." She paused, struggling to find her words. I did something terrible. And I want to say I'm sorry." Sophia stood silently, arms at her sides. "The truth is," Ruth continued, voice quivering, "you came to my house every day, cleaned for me, cooked for me, and I took it all for granted." She held out the bag she'd brought. "This is a small token of apology. I know it can't make up for how I treated you." But Sophia didn't take it. "Grandma," she said quietly, "I never wanted expensive things." "I know," Ruth said, lowering the bag. "I've looked down on you for so long. I didn't see your kindness, your thoughtfulness, your talent." Claire stepped beside her daughter and placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Even if you say you've changed," Claire said, voice steady, "it's not easy to believe." "I understand," Ruth replied, nodding slowly. "I've been unfair to both of you, especially to Sophia." She turned back to her granddaughter. "I read your diary. I saw how worried you were when I was sick, how you used your own money to buy medicine. I never realized. And after you left today, I finally understood." She wiped her cheeks. "Without your help, I don't know how I'll manage." "That sounds like dependency," Claire said quietly, almost bitterly. Ruth shook her head. "No. It's not just about what she did. It's about what she brought. Her warmth. Her smile. Her light. I didn't see it until I lost it." A long, heavy silence settled in the room. Then Sophia spoke, softly but clearly. "Grandma. I'm not forgiving you." Ruth closed her eyes as if bracing for the blow. "But," Sophia continued, "I'll keep helping you." Ruth's eyes opened, surprised. "But there are conditions," Sophia said, her small voice firm. "You have to acknowledge that I have worth. And you have to treat my mom the same way." Claire's heart swelled. Her daughter stood small, but carried the strength of someone twice her age. "I promise," Ruth whispered through her tears. "I will. I'll change." "It's not words that matter," Claire said gently. "It's what you do next." Ruth nodded, then placed the bag on the table. "This is your Christmas present, Sophia. It's okay if you don't want it." Sophia looked at the bag for a moment, then reached out and opened it. Inside was a small velvet box. She lifted the lid to reveal a delicate silver pendant, a heart-shaped locket. Inside the locket were 2 tiny photos, one of Ruth, and one of Sophia. "This was passed down to me from my mother," Ruth explained. "It's very precious to me." Sophia stared at it, then slowly closed the box. "Thank you, Grandma," she said, her voice soft but steady. Her voice was soft, but in it, a small crack appeared in the wall of rejection. "Would you like some tea?" Claire asked, surprised by her own words. Ruth looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Claire. The three of them sat around the kitchen table, speaking gently over steaming mugs of tea. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, as if nature itself had decided to offer a clean slate. 1 year later, Christmas Day, from the windows of Claire's home, golden light spilled onto the snowy lawn outside. Inside, a large Christmas tree stood in the living room, surrounded by neatly wrapped gifts. The scent of cookies and cinnamon floated from the kitchen, and laughter echoed softly throughout the house. Sophia, where should I place this? Ruth asked, holding a set of festive decorations for the dining table. Her transformation over the past year was remarkable. Her once sharp demeanor had softened, her smile came more easily, and her health had clearly improved. But more than anything, her warmth was genuine now. In the center of the table, Sophia replied, helping her mom finish the last of the baking. Now 13, Sophia stood a little taller and carried herself with newfound confidence. Around her neck, the silver heart-shaped locket gleamed quietly, a symbol of something reclaimed and treasured. Just then, the front door opened with a gust of cold air. Sorry we're late, Julia called, brushing snow from her coat. Caleb's choir practice ran long. Choir? Claire blinked in surprise. Caleb nodded, looking just slightly shy. Yeah. I joined the school choir. Sophia kind of talked me into it. Over the past year, even Caleb had changed. His cocky attitude had been replaced by something gentler, more thoughtful. His bond with Sophia had grown stronger. They weren't just cousins now, but real friends. Sometimes, he even asked her for help with homework. Everyone, dinner is ready. Claire called from the dining room. They gathered around the table, and the atmosphere was entirely different from the Christmas a year before. Laughter was shared equally, and conversation flowed easily. Ruth listened closely, not just to Julia's updates, but to Claire's stories too. And most importantly, she asked Sophia about her life with genuine pride. I heard your drawing won a prize at the school art exhibition, Ruth said. That's just wonderful. Thank you, Grandma, Sophia replied with a bright smile. After dinner, it was time for gifts. Ruth stepped forward, holding a box wrapped with care. Sophia, this one's for you, she said softly. Sophia opened it to reveal a beautiful, leather-bound sketchbook, along with a handwritten card. She opened the card and read, You have given value to my life. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. Beneath the sketchbook was a small stack of classic novels, ones she had long wished for. Thank you, Grandma, she whispered, emotion in her voice. Ruth leaned in and embraced her. No, thank you, for everything you've taught me. Claire watched it all unfold from across the room, smiling quietly. Over the past year, she had come to understand something deeply, that family isn't just about blood. It's about seeing one another, respecting one another, cherishing one another. And yes, sometimes forgiving. Because of Sophia's courage and open heart, their family had changed. Ruth had found new purpose in her life. She'd started volunteering at the local senior center, sharing her story with others, reminding them of the importance of love and second chances. Her words had touched many. Julia, too, had begun to soften. She realized how much pressure her own perfectionism had placed on Caleb and was slowly learning to honor his unique path rather than trying to fit him into a mold. That night, after the guests had gone home and the last cookie had been eaten, Sophia curled up beside Claire on the couch. Mom, she said, her voice full of wonder, we've really become happy, haven't we? Claire stroked her daughter's hair gently. Yes. But this isn't the end, sweetheart. It's just the beginning. Families don't stay the same. They grow. They change. Just like we do. Outside, a fresh layer of snow began to fall, silent and soft, like a quiet promise for the year to come.